Hi and welcome back, darlings. It's wonderful to have you here with me. Spring has sprung and I'm back here at White River Cinema in St Austell with my dear friend Embarrassment, Disgust, Fear and Anxiety. And of course I've got to introduce Will as well. I wasn't referring to you as any of those emotions. Hello, Will.
You right?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
Fine, yes. Yeah.
How are things? Has spring sprung here as well? Does it feel like things are sort of taking off again? We're coming out of the winter slump.
There's a change in films, because you don't necessarily have a winter slump. You don't have the proper seasons, because you will have big films all the way through the year, but you will have probably different types of films at different times of the year, because we've just gone through award season, so
yes.
They get a lot more of the arty and dramatic type of films
award
so running through that. And then we're now hitting spring into summer. This time of year has always been quite popular with big films. The Marvel always like to get an April film out. I was talking about this the other day, and it's tricky to know why they chose that date, but they did, and they ran with it and went really well. So now other film distributors will look at that date and want to get a big film out.
This is the time.
Because they think, oh yeah, that's a good time. People go to cinema.
Do you think Marvel chose it because there wasn't anything else particularly happening in that time frame in film, and they're like, we can actually claim that as, you know, as our big release?
There must be something behind it. I'm thinking there might be an American holiday that I'm not familiar with.
Okay, yeah, quite possibly.
Sometimes, yeah, they'll do stuff on, like, they'll say Labour Weekend film release, so I don't know when Labour Weekend is. I'm not up with the American bank holidays.
Saying about the different types of films that come out in different times of years, I find it curious, the horror films that have been coming out recently, or the horror genre, I should say, that have been coming out recently.
Far too many. I mean, I'm not a horror fan anyway, but there's a time and a place, and I don't mind if they're out like September, October, November. Certainly October, because you've got your Halloween, so that is the season. But you have one a week all the way through Easter and we had it last year as well, too many, and they're just not doing great. People don't want to see a horror at this time of year. So film companies stop bringing them out in April.
Stop doing it in April. I think it's curious, because like we were saying, you know, the clocks have changed now, it's daylight in an evening, and you know, we've had some gorgeous sunshine over the past week. You're not in the mood for a horror film. No.
You want it when it's dark, it's dark and a bit windy.
Wintry and spooky. I even think, you know, January you could get away with it, because, you know, it's still so dark and cold in January. But
a couple of Screams have come out in January, which is a bit of an odd one.
And it's curious to me, the timing of some of these films like that. Definitely. I know you say about the Marvel one. Is the next big Marvel one in April the Deadpool one? That's May, isn't it now?
I think it's later than that. I'm pretty sure it's June. So
they've sort
summer release, so
gone a bit.
Yeah, well, the Marvel slate's been a bit adjusted, shall we say, putting it politely, because they've had a few misses.
Choices have been made.
They've reined it back in. I think the only official one is Wolverine, Deadpool, and that's, should we say, not necessarily official anyway, because it's always been its own sort of
standalone. This is their sort of them bringing it into the MCU now, isn't it? And I think it's convenient in a way that they can use Deadpool to wipe the slate clean and have some fun with it as well.
Do something a bit different. I don't know what they're going to do with their slate, because there's been a few issues, A, with films, and B, with Jonathan Majors as well. They're going to have to recast on that. They're not drawing in the numbers that they were. People were oversaturated and too much TV, so there's a lot of issues they need to address. So they could do with probably having a break, I would say, for another 12 months, or just releasing one, like I said, next year.
I think
focus all on one, quality over quantity. That's what they need to go back to.
I think there's a few sort of light at the end of the tunnel, like the new Fantastic Four cast have been announced and things like this. I think what they need to remember is, you know, the Fantastic Four, they did so well in the comics. They were some of the early first characters from Marvel. And remember to set it in the 60s, set it in the 70s.
That'd be good,
And, you know, you can do it without being cheesy and things like this. You can do it in a way, but
X-Men did, didn't they?
This is it,
I enjoyed those.
And, you know, it doesn't always have to be modern day, current times. We do love these stories from the era that they were set in.
Talking of that, there was discussions, I don't think it's going to happen, but Christopher Nolan, for directing a Bond film, and he said he'd want to do it, but he wanted to do it as a period piece, going back and doing one set in the 60s. No, I think
could see it. Again, different. Why not? Why absolutely not? And all these stories that you could tell back then as well, you know, and we're so much more aware of the socials and the norms of it and things back then, that it can be done without being cheesy. It doesn't have to be the Jetsons or anything like this, you know, it doesn't, you know, you can go back and look at it from a different angle like that. So rather than talking about the future or the past,
the current,
what have we got coming up? What are we talking about in the now?
So it's quite a big month. I think we've been discussing what we should talk about.
Top of my list, Planet of the Apes.
Oh yes.
top tippity top of my list because I love the trilogy, and I think it was a bit underrated, really, the Planet of the Apes trilogy. I think, you know, there was a lot of action going on throughout the 2000s and things like this, and, you know, we were treated to a lot of film and cinema, but the Planet of the Apes, I think they were so well done, so brilliantly done, and the quality of the CGI and the acting and, you know, the ape actors and things like this as well. I'm very excited about it coming back. I'm very excited just to go back into that world again.
Yes, yeah. I think there might be a few CGI apes in amongst the actors.
I don't believe it for a second. Don't believe it for a second. They're all trained. Lovely. Yeah, they're in the trailer. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Johnny Vegas, he's handling them. Yeah, like I said, I'm happy to be in that world because I think obviously you've got the original Planet of the Apes. Then you had the Mark Wahlberg remake, which let's not talk about. And I can see why the premise, somebody would think, oh, this is all a bit silly, you know, apes taking over the world. But the way it was done in that original trilogy, they've got to a point that
they've done it well.
It's quite real.
They gave it good realism. I always need that in a film. I need that believability and that realisticness. And I don't consider with superheroes, like Batman I can get on board with, Superman less so. Because
he's an alien. Yes, yeah. I think with the Planet of the Apes as well, I know they obviously touched on the second film that it was like the simian flu that transferred the virus, and given recent events over the past few years, I can see that happening.
Oh, exactly. Yes.
We wouldn't be very good if that did happen. And I think there's, like you say, that's that anchor of realism in there, which has been done so well. And I love all the characters throughout of it as well. So I know it's going to be a different cast of characters and a different plot line, and
because it's jumping forward like 300 years.
Yeah, quite a bit of time.
So it's more the apes are in control of everything now. And I think there are human factions throughout, but I think they're sort of controlled by the apes and sort of made to work for them.
And a part of me, it's the world building of it all. I love to see what's happened in those 300 years to the world we knew.
Yeah.
Because I know throughout the first three films, I think there might have been a bit of too much sort of the world taking over. Like there was a lot of trees that I sometimes thought, that wouldn't have happened in that space of 10 years. You know, some of the trees were quite big and where it had overtaken the city and things like this. Whereas 300 years is an awful lot of time.
That level now,
to transform what we're used to.
Yeah, I would say, like I said, with the city sort of being taken over by nature, you would sort of put it down to about 100 years.
Yeah, so I think this would now be a good enough jump to move forward like that. So no, really, really looking forward to that one. What else have we got coming up?
Fall Guy, beginning of the month. So
yes.
Yeah.
So this is
Emily Blunt.
Ryan Gosling, Emily Blunt. And tell me about this one.
He's a stuntman, and then something goes wrong on set, and then he gets involved in like a real life event with Emily Blunt, and it's like a bit of action mystery thriller type of thing. So,
this is one that I've sort of heard about for a long time coming.
Yes, it's been trailered for quite a while.
It just sort of feels like it's been on its way for a bit of time like that now.
Yeah.
I've seen they've started doing the press touring and things like this. I've even seen somebody jumping through a glass case onto the red carpet and things like this before, so they're really going for it.
Yes,
but it does feel like this one's been a long time on its way now.
Definitely, yeah. It's about time it was released. So,
Get that one.
A lot of them might have been set out because Bike Rider's been traded for a while, but it got put back because of the writer's strike. So I'm not sure Fall Guy might have been affected slightly by the writer's strike and being moved and dates.
Bike Rider's the new Tom Hardy one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Looking forward to that as well. So.
And like you say, this is the problem with this writer's strike. But again, maybe that's why the horror films have been coming out as late as they have.
Yeah, they might have been moved.
Did you think that could have been a course of 6 months?
I can't.
So nobody's listening to us, are they? I think you think if that writer's strike took, say, 6 months, 6 months ago, we would have been in prime horror season, really.
Yeah. Well, there's still some stuff came out then. They could still release things, but a lot of the stuff wasn't doing great, so they were holding them because they couldn't do the press junket and stuff. Because Expendables 4 was an absolute major flop, and they reckon a lot of that was down to the fact that you couldn't get out and push it and promote it.
And that's the thing with the Expendables, is the big names attached to it sell it, and having those 12 geriatric, well-known old men on the red carpet, it does sell it. It's a classic like that, isn't it?
Yeah. There's probably a bit more to it than just the fact they couldn't promote it, maybe.
Did anybody ask for it? Let's start with that, shall we?
Yes.
It is interesting. Obviously, we've got, Inside Out 2. They're pushing it now. This is the next big one, Disney Pixar, obviously, isn't it? This
Disney putting a lot into this.
Coming up in June.
Yeah, they're changing their approach a little bit, Disney, thankfully. I think there's a bit of change going on behind the scenes as well, because I think the executive, is it Bob Iger? I think he's leaving, someone else to replace him. So there's a bit of change around at Disney. I think they're changing their perspectives a little bit. The Disney Plus is not the going to be the overall future they're anticipating. They still need cinematic releases, and they're actually putting some money back into sort of promoting their cinematic releases. So. But they need a good film as well, because the trouble is, a few recently they have been missing, haven't they? I
know, obviously Wish was the last big one from them as well, and it was all right, but nothing, no blockbuster major smash hit that Disney have been known for.
Mixed opinions on Wish. Some people loved it, some didn't. It was, they need, I don't know, they should do well. They're back to sort of familiar ground.
And I think the problem is, again, with Wish, is sometimes Disney, they want to make, at the bottom line, is as much money as possible.
Yeah.
So they want to appeal to as broad of an audience as possible, and sometimes that doesn't work. You've got to represent a certain people at times.
Yeah, do what they know they're good at.
I think Inside Out. This is where I'm going. Inside Out, you've got it's the sequel side of things. And I know notoriously Disney sequels. Back when I was younger, a Disney sequel was straight onto VHS.
Yeah, if they ever did them.
It was Return of Jafar on VHS if you were lucky, if a mate had it. Whereas now to see a theatrical release of a Disney sequel is quite substantial, really.
Yeah.
And the amount of work they've put in, I would say as much as, if not more, work has gone into number 2 of Inside Out than number 1.
Yeah. If you think back, even Lion King, that didn't get sequels, they were straight to video.
Straight to video, You had Lion King 2, Simba's Pride, and then they did a Lion King 2.5, which was from the point of view of Timon and Pumbaa. Have you seen, they are working on a new live-action Lion King. Mufasa story.
Yeah. I'd quite like to see the Mufasa story, but as a cartoon. Because again, you lose the expression from this live action CGI characters of a lion, because part of your brain wants to imagine it's a real lion, and then the other half is trying to imagine actually it's a cartoon character. They make them to look too realistic, don't they? That's the thing. Whereas the cartoons, they've all got their own little, Sky, you knew what he looked like, Mufasa, like that, similar like that. They're cartoons, so they can all look a bit different. They're a lion, but they look completely different.
You can tell who's who.
Whereas you've got live action lions, they all look the same. They might put a bit of a sky in that sky.
Slightly off colour. I know this is what I noticed with saying about Transformers there, is that when we were watching the Transformer films, by the time it got to number 3, everything was a big grey blob to me. I was thinking, who's the bad guy? Who's the good guy? You can always tell what Optimus Prime looks like. Because he's got a fabulous paint job. But the rest of them, I was like, who's who now? Which one am I supporting? Things like this.
The action needs a bit too much and too intense, like Venom. At the end of that, it's basically him fighting himself. And no one knew what the hell was going on there.
And who do you root for? Who do you root for?
It's him.
This is it. So lots coming up, basically, isn't there? Lots going to be happening.
Plenty.
Check out the website for the full list of details, places, what's going on. wtwcinemas.co.uk. What's on White River. We'll be here. You'll be here.
Plenty. I don't know, I've got a holiday coming up, so I may not be.
Right, get in soon if you fancy seeing Will, folks. You heard it here. Look, thank you for joining us. It's been wonderful to have you here with us. I've been Henry Rosewolf for Chaos Digital, and this has been the lovely Will from White River. And we will see you next time. Au revoir. Wave, Will.
If you'd like to find out what's on at your local WTW cinema, please head to wtwcinemas.co.uk.